The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 300 different species gathered for what many believed would be humanity's final judgment. The Council had summoned Earth's delegation not for negotiation, but for surrender. After 7 cycles of war, the combined might of the galaxy's greatest civilizations had finally cornered the stubborn humans in their home system. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vrex Empire adjusted his ceremonial armor, the metal plates clicking softly as he moved. His 4 eyes scanned the assembly with satisfaction. Today would mark the end of the most troublesome species the galaxy had ever encountered. The humans had proven surprisingly resourceful, yes, but resourcefulness only went so far against overwhelming numbers. The primitive species from Sol 3 has requested permission to address this assembly, announced Speaker Vorth, her crystalline voice echoing through the vast hall. Before we proceed with the final terms of their surrender, the Council has agreed to hear their words. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some species chittered with amusement. Others clicked their mandibles in anticipation. The Keth delegation released pheromones of satisfaction into the air, while the energy-based luminari pulsed with what could only be described as smug satisfaction. The great doors at the far end of the chamber hissed open, and a single human walked in. The being was unremarkable by galactic standards. Bipedal, covered in synthetic fabric, with only 2 eyes, and no visible natural weapons. Ambassador Sarah Chen moved with quiet confidence, her black hair pulled back in a simple style, her dark suit crisp and professional. She carried no weapons, no ceremonial armor, nothing that might intimidate the assembled representatives. The walk to the center of the chamber took exactly 3 minutes. Sarah's footsteps echoed in the sudden silence, as hundreds of alien eyes tracked her movement. She reached the speaking platform, a raised dais in the center of the circular chamber, and looked up at the towering representatives surrounding her on all sides. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I come before you today, not as a supplicant, but as a messenger." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Even facing total defeat, these humans maintained their insufferable pride. He had studied their species extensively during the war. They were illogical, emotional, and refused to accept the natural order of things. When the galaxy's 3 most powerful empires had united against them, any rational species would have immediately surrendered. Instead, the humans had fought with a ferocity that bordered on insanity. "The human delegation will present their terms of surrender," Speaker Vorth announced, her tone suggesting this was merely a formality. "The Council has prepared the standard protocols for primitive species integration." Sarah smiled then, an expression that somehow made several nearby representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not here to discuss surrender terms." The chamber erupted in sounds of disbelief. Hisses, clicks, electronic squeals, and harmonized tones created a cacophony of alien indignation. How dare this primitive creature waste their time with delusions of victory? "The human military forces have been contained within their home system," growled General Krex of the Dominion Fleet. "Your pathetic world fleets are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Your industrial capacity has been crippled by our blockade. Accept reality." "Human. Oh, we accept reality completely," Sarah replied, her voice cutting through the noise. "The question is, whether you do." She reached into her jacket and withdrew a small device, no larger than her palm. Several weapons were instantly trained on her, but she made no threatening moves. Instead, she placed the device on the platform and activated it with a simple touch. A holographic display sprang to life above the platform, showing a 3-dimensional map of the local galactic sector. Hundreds of star systems glowed in different colors, representing the territories of various council species. The Sol system appeared as a small red dot, apparently surrounded by the massive fleets of the Allied powers. "You see humanity's position," Sarah said, gesturing to the display. "Trapped, outnumbered, facing inevitable defeat. This is what your intelligence services have reported, and they're absolutely correct." She touched the device again, and the display zoomed in on the Sol system itself. The assembled fleets became visible, massive formations of ships from dozens of species, all positioned to prevent any human vessel from escaping. Your combined fleet represents the largest military force ever assembled in this galaxy, Sarah continued. 12,000 capital ships, 40,000 escorts, support vessels numbering in the hundreds of thousands, the pride of 300 civilizations. United in common cause. Ambassador Zethkar felt a growing unease. The human's calm demeanor was unsettling. Why wasn't she begging for mercy? Why didn't she seem afraid? What you may not realize, Sarah said, her finger hovering over the device, is that we've been studying you as carefully as you've been studying us. 7 years of war tends to teach you things about your enemies, their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. She pressed another control, and the holographic display shifted. New markers appeared on the map, small, almost invisible dots scattered throughout Council space. There were hundreds of them, thousands, positioned near every major world and installation. We've learned, for instance, that your species evolved on worlds with relatively stable stellar activity. Your ships are designed for efficiency, not hardship. Your populations cluster around systems with predictable energy outputs. Your entire civilization is built on the assumption that the universe is a fundamentally safe place. The chamber had fallen deadly silent. Representatives leaned forward, studying the new markers with growing alarm. The dots were positioned with surgical precision. Near shipyards, industrial centers, population hubs, military academies. Humanity, on the other hand, evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, asteroid impacts, supernovas in nearby systems. We learned early that the universe is not safe. It's not predictable. And it's certainly not fair. Sarah's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it now. So when you decided to unite the galaxy against us, we did what humans do best. We adapted. She pressed the device one final time, and the small dots began to blink in sequence. Each pulse was accompanied by a technical readout that made several council members gasp in recognition. Those markers represent human observation posts that have been in position for the past 18 months, Sarah explained. Each one is staffed by volunteers who understand that they're not coming home. Each one has been equipped with a device we call a stellar ignition catalyst. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the translator systems seemed to pause in shock. You're bluffing, Zethkar whispered, though his voice carried clearly in the stillness. No species would develop such weapons. The ethical implications alone. Ethics are a luxury for species that don't face extinction, Sarah replied. When you declared war on humanity, you made it very clear that you intended to wipe us from existence. We simply decided that if we're going down, we're taking the whole galaxy with us. She gestured to the holographic display, where thousands of stars were now marked with the ominous blinking dots. Each device can destabilize a star's core structure, turning any main sequence star into a supernova. The process is irreversible once initiated. The energy release will sterilize everything within a 50 light-year radius. General Krex's translator was having difficulty processing his species' equivalent of profanity. You're talking about genocide on a scale never before imagined. Quadrillions of innocent lives. Yes, Sarah agreed simply. Just like you were planning for humanity. The implications began to sink in across the chamber. If the humans were telling the truth, they had turned the entire galaxy into a hostage situation. Every major civilization, every populated system, every achievement of galactic society was now held at the mercy of a species that had just proven they were willing to destroy everything rather than accept defeat. This is madness, Speaker Vorth said, her crystalline form flickering with distress. You would destroy countless innocent civilizations for the actions of their governments? Your governments represent your people's will, Sarah pointed out. Every species in this chamber voted to support the war against humanity. You made it a galaxy-wide conflict. We're simply responding in kind. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. But we're not monsters. We're giving you a choice. You have 72 hours to begin withdrawing your fleets from human space. Complete withdrawal within 30 days, followed by formal recognition of human sovereignty and non-interference guarantees. And if we refuse? Zethkar asked. Though he suspected he already knew the answer. Sarah's expression didn't change. Then we activate every device simultaneously. Every star goes supernova. The galaxy becomes a sterile wasteland, and humanity dies knowing that we took our enemies with us. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted in a dozen different languages, demanding proof, calling for military action, pleading for sanity. But underneath the noise, a cold realization was spreading. The humans had just checkmated the entire galaxy. Sarah stood calmly in the center of the storm, waiting for the inevitable question that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The question that would reveal whether the Galactic Council was dealing with a bluff, or with a species that had just redefined the concept of mutually assured destruction on a cosmic scale. The emergency session convened 6 hours after Ambassador Chen's announcement, with every major power in the galaxy represented either in person or through emergency holograms. The Great Chamber had been cleared of all but the most essential personnel, and the air recycling systems worked overtime to process the various atmospheric requirements of the assembled species. Admiral Vex Thar, of the Hegemony Fleet, paced behind his delegation's position, his scaled hide reflecting the chamber's emergency lighting. As the military coordinator for the entire anti-human campaign, he bore the responsibility for determining whether humanity's threat was real or an elaborate bluff. The weight of potential genocide pressed down on his shoulders like a physical force. "The technical analysis is complete," announced Dr. Krelon, the galaxy's foremost expert on stellar engineering. Her insectoid features clicked nervously as she addressed the assembly. "The human claims are theoretically possible. Stellar ignition catalysts exist within the realm of known physics, though no civilization has ever attempted to build them. Theoretically possible and actually deployed are two very different things," argued Defense Minister Poulter of the Syndicate. "These humans could be showing us fabricated sensor data, fictional readouts designed to terrify us into submission. Oleven is 1. A levergenes of Sun 17. Readant of 17. A levergenes of 17. A levergenes of 17. A levergenes of 17. A leverage. Senator Yulmoth of the Trade Federation leaned forward on his mechanical supports, his electronic voice carrying a note of calculated concern. "The economic implications alone argue for caution. If even 1% of their claimed devices are real, the resulting stellar disruptions would collapse galactic commerce for generations." Admiral Vexthar stopped pacing and faced the assembly. "I've spent 7 years fighting these humans. They don't bluff. When they say they'll do something, they do it, regardless of cost or consequences. That's what makes them so dangerous." The chamber fell silent as representatives considered his words. The war against humanity had indeed been unlike any previous conflict. Human tactics defied conventional military wisdom, often sacrificing entire fleets to achieve strategic objectives that seemed minor by galactic standards. Their willingness to accept casualties was unprecedented among spacefaring civilizations. "Even assuming their threat is real," said Councillor Wrath of the Dominion, "activating such devices would mean their own extinction. No species is that suicidal." "You're thinking like a rational civilization," Vexthar replied grimly. "Humans aren't rational. They're survivors. When cornered, they don't calculate odds or weigh benefits. They fight until either they win or everything dies." Speaker Vorth called for order as murmurs spread through the chamber. "The question before us is simple. Do we call their bluff and risk the destruction of everything we've built? Or do we accede to their demands?" "There's a third option," said General Krex, his massive form dominating his section of the chamber. "We could attempt to locate and neutralize their devices before they can activate them." Dr. Krelon's mandibles clicked in what her species used to indicate extreme doubt. "The technical requirements for hiding stellar manipulation devices make detection nearly impossible. They would need to be positioned within the chromosphere of each target star, protected by the stellar energy output itself. Any attempt to scan for them would require getting close enough to the star to trigger automatic activation protocols. Furthermore," added Intelligence Chief Nargoth, her tentacles writhing with agitation. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual energy signatures near 17 different star systems over the past 18 months. At the time, we attributed them to natural phenomena or sensor errors. In retrospect, they match the timeline for device deployment. Also, SN. The weight of confirmation settled over the assembly like a suffocating blanket. 17 confirmed signatures meant hundreds more could be hidden beyond their detection capabilities. The humans hadn't been bluffing when they showed thousands of marked systems. Ambassador Zethkar activated his communication array to address his home government. The Vrex Empire had contributed more ships to the anti-human alliance than any other power, making them the primary architects of this confrontation. The Emperor's response came through in harsh, clipped tones that needed no translation. "The Vrex position is unchanged," Zethkar announced. "We do not negotiate with terrorists, regardless of their claims or threats." "Easy words from someone whose homeworld isn't marked for destruction," muttered Trade Minister Yulmoth. His faction's analysis had identified over 40 syndicate systems within the potential blast zones. "Every civilization represented here has worlds at risk," Admiral Vexthar pointed out. "The humans weren't selective in their targeting. They've essentially taken the entire galaxy hostage." Speaker Vorth consulted her data displays, reviewing the tactical situation. With growing unease, the combined fleet represented the largest military force in galactic history, but it was designed to fight ships and armies, not to prevent the detonation of weapons already in position around distant stars. "What would withdrawal actually accomplish?" asked Defense Minister Poltar. "Even if we pull back our forces, what prevents the humans from making new demands in the future? Today they want recognition of sovereignty. Tomorrow, they might demand tribute, territory, or subjugation of council members." The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If they yielded to humanity's demands now, they would be establishing a precedent that could reshape the entire galactic balance of power. A species that could credibly threaten stellar destruction would effectively become the galaxy's supreme authority. "There's something else to consider," said Intelligence Chief Nargoth, her voice carrying an ominous undertone. "Our psychological profiles of human behavior suggest they view this conflict in existential terms. They genuinely believe that surrender means extinction for their species." "Because it does," Admiral Vexthar confirmed. The Council's surrender terms included population controls, technological restrictions, and mandatory resettlement programs. From their perspective, we weren't offering conquest, we were offering cultural death. Senator Yulmoth's mechanical voice carried a note of bitter irony. "So in our attempt to prevent them from becoming a threat to galactic stability, we've forced them to become the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced." Dr. Krelon activated a holographic display showing stellar formation charts. If they're telling the truth about the number of devices deployed, activation would trigger a cascading effect. The stellar debris from the initial supernovas would destabilize neighboring systems, creating a chain reaction of stellar collapse across multiple sectors. The implications were staggering. Not only would the immediate explosions destroy hundreds of civilizations, but the resulting stellar debris would make vast regions of the galaxy uninhabitable for millions of years. Trade routes would become death zones. Habitable worlds would be stripped of their atmospheres, and the galactic civilization that had taken eons to develop would be reduced to scattered survivors in the galaxy's outer rim. "We need proof," declared General Krex. "Before we make any decision, we need verification that their devices exist and function as claimed." "How do we verify something designed to be undetectable?" asked Councillor Wrath. "Any test would require them to actually detonate a star, which defeats the entire purpose of verification." Speaker Vorth's crystalline form flickered with stress patterns. The weight of decision was unlike anything the Council had ever faced. Every choice led to catastrophic outcomes, and the margin for error was measured in the survival of galactic civilization itself. "There is one possibility," Dr. Krelon said hesitantly. "If they agreed to demonstrate their technology on an uninhabited system, we could observe the process and confirm their capabilities without risking populated worlds. And if the demonstration succeeds, We confirm that they can destroy any star in the galaxy," Admiral Vexthar pointed out. "That knowledge changes nothing about our tactical position." The debate continued through the night cycle, with representatives arguing over technical possibilities, strategic implications, and moral responsibilities. But underneath every discussion was the growing realization that humanity had fundamentally altered the rules of galactic conflict. They had moved beyond conventional warfare into the realm of cosmic destruction, and the galaxy's greatest civilizations found themselves helpless against an enemy that was willing to die to ensure their enemies died with them. As the emergency session entered its 8th hour, a new message arrived from the human delegation. Ambassador Chen was requesting permission to address the Council again, claiming she had additional information that would influence their decision. The message was brief, but it carried an undertone that made even the most hardened military commanders feel a chill of apprehension. The humans weren't finished with their revelations, and whatever they had to say next would determine whether the galaxy lived or died. Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to the council chamber exactly 12 hours after her first appearance. But this time she wasn't alone. 3 other humans accompanied her, each carrying equipment cases that made several representatives nervous. The security protocols had been intensified, with scanning arrays and weapon detectors active throughout the chamber. But the humans submitted to every check without complaint. The assembled council members looked haggard after hours of debate. Several species required different sleep cycles, and the emergency session had disrupted normal biological rhythms across the chamber. Despite their exhaustion, every representative was present. The fate of their civilizations hung in the balance, and none dared miss whatever revelation humanity was prepared to share. "Honored council members," Sarah began, her voice carrying the same calm confidence as before. "I understand you've been debating the validity of our claims. This is natural and expected. No rational species would accept such extraordinary assertions without proof." She gestured to her companions, who began setting up their equipment on the speaking platform. "Therefore, we're prepared to provide a demonstration." The chamber erupted in alarmed voices. General Krex rose from his position, his massive form radiating tension. "If you're suggesting the detonation of an inhabited system as proof of concept, we cannot and will not permit it." "Of course not," Sarah replied, seeming genuinely offended by the suggestion. "We're not monsters, General. The demonstration we're offering is quite different." Dr. Martinez, a human scientist with graying hair and tired eyes, activated a complex holographic projector. The display that emerged was unlike anything the Council's technology could produce. It showed real-time stellar mapping data, with resolution down to the subatomic level. "What you're seeing is a live feed from one of our devices," Dr. Martinez explained. "This particular unit is positioned within the chromosphere of Kepler 442, an uninhabited G-class star, approximately 47 light-years from here." The display zoomed in to show the device itself. A crystalline structure roughly the size of a shuttle, protected by energy fields that allowed it to exist within the intense environment of stellar plasma. Streams of data flowed across the display, showing the device's interaction with the star's nuclear processes. The stellar ignition catalyst works by introducing exotic matter into the star's core through controlled quantum tunneling. Dr. Martinez continued. "The exotic matter creates a cascade reaction that destabilizes the nuclear binding forces holding the star together." Dr. Krelon leaned forward, her compound eyes focusing intently on the data streams. As the galaxy's leading stellar engineer, she could interpret the readings better than anyone else in the chamber. What she saw made her mandibles click with involuntary fear. "The energy patterns are consistent with theoretical models for stellar core destabilization," she confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. "If this data is accurate, the device could indeed trigger a supernova event." "It is accurate," said the third human, introducing himself as Commander Torres. "I personally oversaw the deployment of this particular unit 18 months ago. It's been feeding us data continuously since activation." Sarah stepped forward, her expression serious. "We're offering to demonstrate the device's initial phase on Kepler 442. The star will begin showing signs of instability within 6 hours of activation, observable from this distance with standard stellar monitoring equipment. And then, asked Speaker Vorth, her crystalline form flickering with anxiety. Then we abort the process before it becomes irreversible, Sarah explained. The demonstration will prove our capability without actually destroying the star. However, this offer comes with conditions. Ambassador Zethkar's 4 eyes narrowed suspiciously. What conditions? First, a full council vote authorizing the demonstration must be completed within the next 6 hours. Second, all military fleets must begin withdrawing from human space immediately after the vote. Third, formal negotiations for the recognition of human sovereignty must commence within 72 hours. The audacity of the demands struck the chamber like a physical blow. The humans were essentially asking the council to agree to their terms before even seeing proof that the threat was real. It was a calculated gamble that revealed the depth of human psychological understanding. You're asking us to capitulate before you've proven anything, General Krex growled. No, Sarah corrected. We're asking you to demonstrate good faith. If our proof is satisfactory, you'll have lost nothing. If it isn't, you can resume military operations with the knowledge that our threat was empty. And if we refuse your conditions? Asked Defense Minister Poltar. Dr. Martinez touched a control on his equipment, and the display shifted to show energy readings from the device at Kepler 442. The numbers were climbing steadily, approaching what the readouts identified as critical thresholds. The device has been charging for 18 months, he explained. It's designed to activate automatically if it doesn't receive a stand-down signal every 72 hours. The next scheduled transmission is due in 67 hours. The implications sank in like ice water through the Council's collective consciousness. The humans had built a deadman switch into their ultimate weapon. If anything happened to prevent their regular communications, the devices would activate on their own. Intelligence Chief Nargoth's tentacles writhed with agitation. You're saying that even if we destroyed every human ship and killed every human being, your devices would still activate? Correct, Sarah confirmed. Mutual assured destruction only works if the destruction is truly mutual. If we were bluffing, you could call our bluff by eliminating us. Since we're not bluffing, eliminating us simply ensures that everyone dies. Admiral Vexthar stood slowly, his scales reflecting the chamber's lighting. I believe them, he announced to the shocked assembly. This matches everything we know about human tactical thinking. They don't make threats they can't carry out, and they don't fight wars they aren't willing to die in. One military commander's opinion isn't sufficient evidence for a decision of this magnitude, protested Councillor Rath. Then examine the evidence, Doctor, Martinez said, activating additional displays that showed technical specifications for the stellar devices. These aren't theoretical drawings. These are construction blueprints, deployment records, and operational data from over 4,000 functional units. The chamber fell silent as representatives absorbed the scope of the human operation. 4,000 stellar devices meant 4,000 star systems at risk. The careful positioning shown in the data encompassed every major civilization and most minor ones. The humans had spent nearly 2 years preparing for this moment, investing resources and personnel on a scale that suggested absolute commitment to their threat. Dr. Krelon studied the technical data with growing amazement and horror. The engineering is actually quite elegant, she admitted reluctantly. They've solved several theoretical problems that have puzzled stellar engineers for centuries. We had significant motivation, Commander Torres observed dryly. When your entire species faces extinction, you tend to find creative solutions to technical challenges. Speaker Vorth called for a brief recess while the major powers consulted with their home governments. The communication delay to distant capital worlds meant that responses would take time, but the urgency of the situation required input from the highest levels of authority. During the recess, Sarah and her team remained at the speaking platform, monitoring their equipment and making final preparations for the demonstration. The casual way they handled devices capable of stellar destruction was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire encounter. When the session resumed, the voting process began immediately. Each major power cast their vote publicly, with supporting statements that revealed the depth of their internal debates. The Vrex Empire voted against the demonstration, maintaining their position that negotiating with terrorists set a dangerous precedent. The Dominion voted in favor, citing the mathematical probability that at least some of the human claims were accurate. The Trade Federation abstained, unable to reach consensus between economic and security concerns. As the votes were tallied, the margin grew closer with each announcement. The decision would come down to the minor powers and associate members, species that typically followed the lead of their major allies, but now found themselves casting votes that could determine galactic survival. The final tally was announced with ceremonial gravity: 847 votes in favor, 743 against, with 312 abstentions. The demonstration was authorized by the narrowest margin in Council history. Sarah nodded acknowledgement of the vote and activated her communication device. "This is Ambassador Chen to all human vessels. Implement immediate strategic withdrawal to predetermined coordinates. Begin Phase 1 of the demonstration protocol." Across the galaxy, human ships began moving away from their positions near the stellar devices. It was a gesture of good faith that also served a tactical purpose. When the devices activated, no human personnel would be at risk from the resulting energy releases. "The demonstration will commence in 6 hours, Sarah announced. "I suggest you prepare your best stellar observation equipment. You're about to see something that no civilization has ever witnessed before." She paused, looking around the chamber one final time before delivering her closing statement. "And remember, what you're about to see is just one star, under controlled conditions, with safeguards in place. We have 4,000 more devices that won't have those safeguards if you force us to use them." The chamber cleared quickly as representatives rushed to contact their observation teams and prepare for humanity's ultimate proof of their cosmic scale power. In 6 hours, they would learn whether the galaxy's newest members were capable of becoming its destroyers. The observation chamber aboard the Council's premier research vessel Time's Synthesis of Knowledge Times had never been so crowded. Representatives from every major civilization pressed against viewing ports and clustered around sensor stations, watching displays that showed the Kepler 442 system from multiple angles and wavelengths. The tension was so thick that several species' breathing apparatus had begun working overtime. Dr. Krelon stood at the primary monitoring station, her insectoid features rigid with concentration, as she calibrated the most sensitive stellar analysis equipment the galaxy possessed. Around her, teams of scientists from dozens of different species worked in unprecedented cooperation, united by the knowledge that they were about to witness either the greatest scientific demonstration in galactic history or the opening act of cosmic genocide. "All monitoring stations report ready," announced Chief Science Officer Veltar, her crystalline form resonating with barely controlled anxiety. "Gravitational wave detectors are online, quantum field analyzers are calibrated, and real-time stellar mapping is active across all relevant wavelengths." Admiral Vexthar paced behind the science teams, his military training warring with his growing certainty that conventional tactics were useless against an enemy that could weaponize stars themselves. Beside him, Intelligence Chief Nargoth monitored communications from across the galaxy, tracking the movements of human vessels as they implemented their strategic withdrawal. "Human ships are maintaining their promised positions," she reported, her tentacles rippling with nervous energy. "No vessels within 50 light-years of any marked systems. No military formations in attack postures. Either they're extremely confident in their demonstration, or they're preparing to flee if their bluff is called." "They're not fleeing," Vexthar said grimly. "Look at their deployment pattern. Every human ship is positioned to maximize survival time if stellar detonations begin across the galaxy. They're not running away. They're preparing to watch the universe burn." The countdown timer reached 0 at exactly 14:32 Galactic Standard Time. For the first 30 seconds, nothing appeared to change. Kepler 442 continued its normal nuclear burning. The sensor readings remained within expected parameters, and several representatives began to whisper that perhaps the human threat had been a massive bluff after all. Then Dr. Krelon's equipment began registering anomalies. "I'm detecting quantum fluctuations in the star's core," she announced, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "The exotic matter injection has begun. Nuclear binding forces are showing microscopic variations." The main display shifted to show a cross-section of the star's interior, with false color imaging that revealed the normally stable fusion processes beginning to fluctuate. Deep within the stellar core, tiny pockets of exotic matter were creating cascade effects that spread outward like ripples in a pond. Temperature variations are increasing, reported Dr. Ythran of the Dominion Science Corps. The star's core temperature has risen by 0.003% in the last 2 minutes. At this rate of increase, critical instability will occur in approximately 4 hours. 4 hours, whispered Ambassador Zethkar, his 4 eyes fixed on the display. They can destabilize a star in 4 hours. The full implications began to sink in across the observation chamber. If the humans could trigger stellar collapse this quickly, their threat to destroy the galaxy wasn't empty posturing. It was a technical capability they could implement faster than most civilizations could mobilize their fleets. Stellar magnetic field fluctuations are accelerating, Dr. Krelon continued, her voice maintaining professional calm despite the magnitude of what she was witnessing. The exotic matter is creating feedback loops in the nuclear processes. The star is beginning to lose structural integrity. On the display, Kepler 442 began to show visible signs of distress. Solar flares erupted from its surface with unprecedented intensity, and the normally steady stellar wind became turbulent and chaotic. The star was quite literally tearing itself apart from the inside out. "This is incredible," breathed Dr. Martinez, the human scientist who had joined the observation mission. "The efficiency is even better than our theoretical models predicted. The exotic matter is finding natural resonance points in the stellar structure." "How long before the process becomes irreversible?" asked Speaker Vorth, her crystalline form flickering with what could only be described as terror. "At current progression rates, we estimate 6 more hours until the point of no return," Dr. Martinez replied. "Once the core instability reaches critical mass, nothing in the known universe can stop the supernova." General Krex studied the tactical implications with growing dread. If they can initiate this process in 4,000 star systems simultaneously, the energy release would be visible from other galaxies, Dr. Krelon finished. The gravitational waves alone would disrupt stellar formation for millions of light-years in every direction. The communication systems suddenly activated with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Military commanders, government leaders, and scientific institutions were all reporting the same phenomenon. They could detect the energy signatures from Kepler 442's destabilization from their home systems. The human demonstration was being observed by every civilization capable of stellar monitoring. "The psychological impact is brilliant," admitted Intelligence Chief Nargoth with grudging respect. "Every world in the galaxy can see proof of human capability. Even if the Council wanted to suppress this information, it's too late." Ambassador Chen's voice came through the communication system with perfect timing. "Observation teams should be detecting clear signs of stellar instability by now. The process will continue for another 5 hours before we implement the abort sequence. This will give your scientists time to confirm that our claims are accurate." "The abort sequence," Dr. Martinez explained to the assembled observers. "We can reverse the exotic matter injection by introducing counter-resonance frequencies to the stellar core. It requires precise timing, but the star will return to normal stability within 12 hours of activation." "And if you choose not to activate the abort sequence?" asked Dr. Krelon. "Then Kepler 442 explodes exactly as we've described. The supernova would be visible from Earth, with the naked eye, assuming Earth still exists when the light reaches us." The demonstration continued with methodical precision. Every hour brought new confirmations of the star's increasing instability, and each measurement validated another aspect of human claims. The exotic matter was performing exactly as described. The timeline matched their predictions perfectly, and the technical specifications proved accurate down to the smallest detail. By the 4th hour, even the most skeptical council members were forced to acknowledge that humanity possessed the capability they claimed. Kepler 442 was dying, killed by a device small enough to fit in a shuttle bay but powerful enough to destroy entire star systems. "The stellar core temperature has increased by 2%, Dr. Krelon reported. "We're approaching the theoretical threshold for runaway fusion acceleration. If the humans don't abort soon, the process may become irreversible regardless of their intentions. Implementing abort sequence now, Dr. Martinez announced, his fingers moving across control interfaces with practiced precision. Counter-resonance fields are being generated. Exotic matter neutralization will begin in 30 seconds. The assembled observers watched in fascination as the human scientist began the most complex stellar engineering operation ever attempted. The exotic matter that had been tearing the star apart was systematically neutralized by carefully timed energy pulses, each one calibrated to counteract specific quantum effects within the stellar core. "It's working," Dr. Yithron confirmed, amazement clear in his voice. "The temperature fluctuations are stabilizing. The nuclear processes are returning to normal parameters. Magnetic field variations are decreasing," added Dr. Krelon. "The stellar structure is regaining coherence. They're actually saving the star." Over the next 6 hours, Kepler 442 slowly returned to stable burning. The violent solar flares subsided, the chaotic stellar winds calmed, and the quantum fluctuations that had threatened to tear the star apart gradually faded away. It was as if the near destruction had never happened. Except for the detailed sensor logs that proved humanity's ultimate weapon was real. "Demonstration complete," Ambassador Chen announced. "As promised, Kepler 442 has been restored to normal stellar function. The star will continue burning for approximately 4 billion more years, exactly as it would have before our intervention." The observation chamber fell silent as the implications fully registered. Humanity hadn't just proven they could destroy stars. They had proven they could control that destruction with surgical precision. They could kill a civilization with the flip of a switch, or spare it with equal ease. "The abort sequence requires active intervention," Dr. Martinez explained. "If our people are killed, or our communication systems are destroyed, there's no way to save the stars. The devices will activate automatically, and there's no external method to stop the process once it begins." Admiral Vexthar turned away from the displays, his expression grim. "They've won," he said quietly. "Not the war. The entire concept of war. No military force in the galaxy can threaten an enemy that's willing and able to destroy everything, rather than accept defeat." The human delegation prepared to return to the council chambers for the final phase of negotiations. They had proven their capability beyond any possible doubt, and now the galaxy's greatest civilizations would have to decide whether to accept humanity as an equal partner or face the consequences of cosmic suicide. The demonstration was over, but its effects would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. Humanity had just announced their arrival on the galactic stage with the most powerful statement possible. "We are here, we will not be destroyed, and if you try to destroy us, we will take you with us." The age of human diplomacy was about to begin. The final council session convened 71 hours after the Kepler 442 demonstration, with every major government having recalled their fleets to minimum safe distances from human space. The chamber that had witnessed humanity's ultimate threat now hosted what many considered the most important diplomatic negotiation in galactic history. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat at a table that had been positioned at the chamber's center, surrounded by representatives from 300 different civilizations. The arrangement was symbolic. Humanity at the center, with the galaxy's established powers arranged in concentric circles around them. It was a visual representation of how completely the balance of power had shifted. The Terran Colonial Authority formally recognizes the sovereignty of the Human Soul Federation over their claimed territorial boundaries, Sarah announced, reading from a document that had taken 3 days of intense negotiation to finalize. "In return, we offer the galaxy a new paradigm for interspecies relations." Speaker Vorth activated the chamber's formal recording systems. This agreement would become the foundation for a new galactic constitution, and every word would be studied by historians for millennia to come. "The stellar ignition catalysts will remain in place," Sarah continued, "but they will serve as guarantors of peace rather than weapons of destruction. Any act of aggression against Earth or human colonies will result in the destruction of the aggressor's home system. Any attempt to develop similar weapons will be met with immediate retaliation." Ambassador Zethkar shifted uncomfortably in his ceremonial armor. The Vrex Empire had spent the last 3 days frantically searching for any weakness in humanity's position, but their most brilliant strategists had reached the same conclusion as everyone else. There was no military solution to an enemy that had made the entire galaxy their hostage. You're establishing yourselves as galactic hegemon through threat of mass destruction, he observed bitterly. This is not diplomacy. It's cosmic terrorism. No, Sarah corrected, her voice carrying a tone of patient explanation. We're establishing a balance of terror that makes war obsolete. For the first time in galactic history, no civilization will be able to achieve military victory through superior numbers or technology. General Krex leaned forward from his position in the military section. What happens when other species develop similar capabilities? When every civilization has the power to destroy stars? What prevents total galactic annihilation? The same thing that prevents it now, Sarah replied. Mutual self-interest. We're not the first species to develop world-ending weapons. Every civilization in this chamber possesses the technology to sterilize planets. But you don't use those weapons because you understand the consequences. Dr. Martinez stood to address the scientific concerns that had been raised during the negotiations. The stellar devices represent a natural evolution of deterrent theory. Just as planetary weapons made conventional war between spacefaring species largely obsolete, stellar weapons make any form of aggressive war essentially impossible. Unless someone is willing to commit cosmic suicide, pointed out Defense Minister Poltar. Which brings us to the psychological component, Sarah said. Humans are uniquely suited to this role because we evolved on a world that taught us to survive at any cost. We don't view mutually assured destruction as an unacceptable outcome. We view it as a final victory condition. The statement sent chills through the assembled representatives. Most galactic species had evolved on relatively stable worlds with predictable environments. The concept of choosing death over defeat was literally alien to their thinking. Intelligence Chief Nargoth activated her analysis displays, showing the results of 3 days of intensive psychological evaluation. Our xenopsychologists confirm that humans exhibit unprecedented levels of spite-driven behavior. They will accept personal destruction to ensure their enemies suffer equally. It's not spite, Sarah corrected gently. It's justice. If you try to wipe us out, we'll make sure the universe remembers that we existed by taking you with us. Senator Yulmoth of the Trade Federation raised a mechanical appendage for recognition. The economic implications of this new paradigm need discussion. How do we maintain galactic commerce when any trade dispute could potentially escalate to stellar destruction? The same way you maintain commerce now when any dispute could escalate to planetary bombardment, Sarah replied. Through rational negotiation, mutual benefit, and the understanding that some conflicts aren't worth the ultimate cost. But the scale of potential destruction has increased exponentially, Dr. Krelan pointed out. A single miscalculation could destroy entire sectors of the galaxy. Which means there won't be any miscalculations, Sarah said firmly. When the stakes are that high, everyone becomes very careful about avoiding conflict. Admiral Vexthar stood to address the military implications. You're asking us to restructure our entire defense doctrine around the assumption that humans will always act rationally. What happens if your leadership changes? What if future human governments are less restrained? The stellar devices are controlled by an automated system that responds to specific threat parameters, Dr. Martinez explained. No single human leader can activate them unilaterally, and the system is designed to prevent political manipulation. Furthermore, Sarah added, the devices will be gradually deactivated over the next century as galactic civilization adapts to the new paradigm. Once everyone understands that stellar destruction is a credible threat, the actual weapons become unnecessary. Speaker Vorth consulted her data displays, reviewing the formal treaty terms that would reshape galactic civilization. The proposed agreement establishes human space as sovereign territory, recognizes Earth's right to defensive retaliation, and creates a new framework for interspecies conflict resolution. The framework is simple, Sarah summarized. Conflicts are resolved through negotiation, arbitration, or limited conventional engagement. Any attempt to achieve victory through overwhelming force triggers stellar retaliation against the aggressor. "And who determines what constitutes overwhelming force?" asked Counselor Wrath. "The same automated systems that control the stellar devices," Dr. Martinez replied. "The threat parameters are clearly defined and publicly available. Any military deployment that meets the criteria for existential threat will trigger automatic response." The implications were staggering. Humanity had essentially appointed themselves as the galaxy's ultimate arbitrators, with the power to enforce their decisions through cosmic destruction. Yet the alternative, allowing the current crisis to escalate, was even worse. "The vote on the Human Sovereignty Accord will now commence," Speaker Vorth announced. "All in favor of accepting the proposed treaty terms?" The votes came in slowly, with each delegation carefully weighing the consequences of their decision. Accepting the accord meant acknowledging human dominance over galactic affairs, but rejecting it meant facing the very real possibility of universal destruction. When the final tally was announced, the result was overwhelming. 1,847 votes in favor, 91 against, with 164 abstentions. Humanity had just been recognized as a sovereign power with the authority to enforce galactic peace through stellar destruction. "The Human Sovereignty Accord is hereby adopted," Speaker Vorth declared. "May this day mark the beginning of a new era of galactic peace." Sarah Chen stood and activated a communication device that sent signals across the galaxy. "All stellar devices are now in standby mode," she announced. "The galaxy is safe, as long as everyone remembers the lessons of the last 72 hours. She looked around the chamber one final time, making eye contact with representatives who would carry this moment back to their homeworlds. "Humanity didn't seek this role, but we won't abandon it. We are now the guardians of galactic peace, and we take that responsibility seriously. The stakes are simple," she continued. "Behave like civilized beings, and everyone lives. Start a war of extinction, and everyone dies. The choice is yours, but the consequences are universal." As the council session concluded and representatives began departing for their home systems, the reality of the new galactic order began to sink in. Humanity had just announced their arrival on the cosmic stage with the ultimate expression of power, the ability to end everything if they were threatened. The galaxy would never be the same. War had become obsolete, not through moral progress or technological advancement, but through the simple recognition that some species were willing to destroy the universe rather than accept defeat. Humanity had kept their promise to send a final message to the Galactic Council. They had told them to retreat while they were able, and now the entire galaxy understood exactly what that message meant. The age of human hegemony had begun. Built on a foundation of mutual assured destruction and enforced by a species that viewed cosmic suicide as an acceptable victory condition, the galaxy was finally at peace, held together by the most terrible threat ever conceived, and humanity stood guard over it all, watching from their small blue world, ready to end everything if anyone dared to threaten the delicate balance they had created. The universe was safe, as long as everyone remembered who held the power to destroy it.